and welcome to the Insurtech Story Podcast, the platform to spread knowledge on insurance innovation, digital disruption, and entrepreneurship. Our website, insurtechstory.com, and we are available on Spotify, Apple, and Google. Today, we will discuss on the topic how blockchain can help insurers innovate. And for now, I'm delighted to welcome our guest, Marlin Daly, who is the Insurance Consulting Director at RSM US LLP, and David Mamain, who is the Financial Services Senior Analyst at RSM Canada. At RSM, Marlin Daly leads the national claims consulting practice, specializing in digital transformation and intelligent process reengineering for insurance and reinsurance clients. Prior to RSM, Marlin has successfully led multidisciplinary teams and provided program management in delivering wide-scale end-to-end platform transformations and digital solutions as the client and as the consultant. Additionally, Marlin is a thought leader in the industry and a published author of key pieces in industry journals. Besides, she is also a United States Air Force veteran and volunteer at Wounded Warrior and AACE events. Our next guest, David Mamain, is a key member of RSM Canada's industry senior analyst and a partner in the firm's consulting practice. He is well versed in business and technology trends that shape middle market businesses in the insurance sector. As a strategic advisor to RSM's client, David leverages his background in actuarial science, data analytics, and business strategy to provide guidance and clarity. David is regularly invited to speak at key leadership conferences on insurance strategic decision making, capital management, and leadership development. Besides, David is an active member of Actuarial Committee, an industry eminent, and a frequent panelist at industry conferences. His accolades include being a recent nominee for the Casualty Actuarial Society Board of Directors. So, Marlin and David, a warm welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Likewise.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So, moving on to today's discussion topic, my first question goes to Marlon. That, in today's world, it is necessary for businesses from various ecosystems to collaborate in order to offer goods and services if the world is going to expand into expanded ecosystems, which eventually it will. So, with blockchain, how do you see insurers innovating to make insurance more interesting and valuable to end users in such a growing, and dynamic ecosystem?
Thanks for the question. Where I see us really innovating from an industry perspective is around smart contracts. I've seen a couple of our clients and a couple of other leading insurers develop POCs in this arena. While there's still a lot of progress to be made, I do believe you'll see more around in the very near future around smart contracts, specifically with parametric insurance.
Right. So, do you have any views? We are seeing a lot of, innovations, a lot of existing concept which is coming up in a new way, and a lot of new concept that is coming up, like including you mentioned the way parametric is getting, transformed, and even in case of embedded insurance, and even how the, captive insurance landscape is growing, even though it was existing one, but it wasn't as prominent as it is today. So, do you think any sort of a traction or any sort of a innovation that these kind of concepts can kind of take better shape in tomorrow's insurance ecosystem?
I do, specifically when it comes to, the insurance industry is risk adverse and always looking for ways to to be more transparent and to eliminate or minimize a lot of fraud. And I think you will see more of that with blockchain. There's a couple of benefits that come to mind when I think about the blockchain technology, which I think could be life changing and forming for the industry itself around transparency, around trust and collaboration, as well as automation.
Yeah, I think, of course, besides keeping the technology aside, you have mentioned two key points, that's trust and transparency. I think that's kind of one of the game changer for the insurance industry when we compare the traditional way of operation and how it should be today and tomorrow. Great. Thanks for your thought, Marlene, there. So, David, my following question is for you. That's the two important factors in blockchain that, one of them we discussed, which is trust, and another one is data, which is also true in case of insurance, right? So, where do you see this connecting at its best to transform this ecosystem?
It's a great question. And when I think about trust and data, the really two lifelines, the lifeblood of the insurance industry, the reason for the insurance industry existing is to build that trusted risk sharing mechanism to protect our day in, day out risks that we face, whether
Right.
personal or businesses or otherwise, or our health or our lives. And frankly, the data side is really the lifeblood of the insurance business model. Without data, you can't do anything from
Yeah.
a risk sharing standpoint. It becomes very, very difficult for products to be priced adequately, for companies to maintain solvent balance sheets. So it's really important. These are two really important factors, not just in blockchain technologies, but in the insurance industry. And so this is where I think the foundational core elements of blockchain are actually quite compatible with the core fundamentals of the insurance industry. Now, I think the challenge, when we think about how to best transform the ecosystem that insurance companies play in, is going to be around data quality. We talk a lot around, the challenges that current legacy insurance companies face with regards to historical acquisition, data integration and migration from those legacy systems. It becomes very, very difficult in many cases when we're having conversations with our clients to implement blockchain POCs or technologies, because it's blockchain can be unforgiving. If your ledger entry is incorrect or missing any form of data, or has a data issue potentially, it will reject the transaction point blank. It won't allow for any sort of tolerance there. And so when you think about implementing POCs or blockchain technologies into the existing value chain, it can be quite challenging and quite robust and quite rigorous in terms of transition effort and migration effort.
Right.
But when you think about the new offerings, and this kind of touches on the first point or question that you brought to Marlene, when you think about the new innovative offerings, whether that's brand new insurance products that are embedded in the purchase of other products, we think about consumer goods, retail travel, and a lot of other areas there. When you're creating new distribution chains or new insurance value chains, I think insurance companies would be at a huge disadvantage if they did not think about blockchain technology as being the enabler of that new product. I think that now has to be the default when people think about launching into new products, launching into new ecosystems, trying to create that expandable network effect product that can take off in another ecosystem. I think the other aspect that I'll talk a little bit about is that consumers don't typically buy insurance products; they are sold to them.
True.
And it's very rare that someone will seek out an insurance product unless there is a life event, purchase of a vehicle, purchase of a home, you have some kids, so you buy more life insurance. The triggers are very rare, and oftentimes very, very difficult, one-off events in someone's life that's very difficult to capture the consumer, to the extent that insurance companies can now tie those transactions to other consumer goods or retail goods that are purchased at higher frequency. That gives more touch points into the end customer, to potentially sell other risk services or products to. And so I think it is somewhat existential from an insurance standpoint, as all of our commerce and digital purchases move online. It's really, really important that the insurance companies meet the consumers where they are spending their money, and not force them into the trap of the legacy ecosystems and distribution channels that they've had in the past. And I think all of this can be enabled on the back end via blockchain.
Yeah.
And so that's just some thoughts I have there in terms of the importance of those two elements.
Sure. So, blockchain essentially it's giving it's functioning at the back, So it's giving the support from behind, but it's essential whichever technology you operate in, but for bringing in transparency, trust, this is something which is the need of the hour for the insurance sector.
It is. I mean, there are so many links within the insurance value chain. You think of, from the consumer to the agent on the phone
Yeah,
collecting or gathering information, to the broker placing that coverage, to the carrier processing that information,
yeah,
to the exchange of information between the customer and the internal insurance company claim staff or potential third-party claim staff, all the way through to reinsurance brokers and reinsurance counterparties, and then
yeah,
and then that value
yeah,
chain continues to expand all the way through to the capital providers of the insurance industry. There are so many players in this ecosystem,
yeah,
and trust is so paramount in this ecosystem. Hence, why it's such a highly regulated industry. The regulatory industry audit requirements within the industry are such to ensure that that trust is maintained throughout that value chain.
yeah,
And there right now that is an incredibly human-driven process, much less so than it could be a technology-driven process
yeah.
empowered through blockchain. But again, it's a very long chain with a lot of links in it. And so it's important for insurance companies that are kind of exploring opportunities in this area to really focus on, the chains or the links in the chain that are of highest and best value today.
Well, and
Because
to
certainly
your
transitioning, yeah. Go ahead, Marlene.
Yes, sorry, Dave. I was just going to say to your point, you're spot on. I just think about the industry when you're talking about blockchain and using like a shared claims ledger, for instance, for inspection where there's no per transaction charge. This is, an immutable record that's auditable. And it's, this is where you get the trust. And this can help reduce fraud, and regulators can also monitor the insurance variables you mentioned, perhaps in real time on the ledger, and that's going to make auditing more seamless. And all of that, when it comes to cost, reducing costs for the insurer will ultimately reduce costs on the consumer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great points you guys have highlighted, and as you mentioned, David, the value chain. I think, be it blockchain or any other technologies, one of the key areas that it's transforming within the value chain is the KYC followed by claims. Because these two areas are one of the major challenges for the sector. So any views on these two elements, which is very key for the insurance business?
I can talk a little bit to the KYC aspect, and Marlene
Yeah,
can jump in on claims. But from a KYC aspect, certainly the regulatory compliance and other compliance requirements regarding KYC is critical to the insurance industry. I mean, similarly on the, it is an industry that has historically had a tremendous amount of fraud in it related to areas like this. It's similar to banking, similar to financial services, and hence why KYC is so important in the insurance and financial services industry more broadly. In terms of the effort put in here, there's been a tremendous amount of investment into advanced techniques and modeling and data collection around detecting and providing indicators of fraud or other issues with regards to KYC. It is very, very difficult to do, though, in its entirety. Bad actors will always find ways to ultimately circumvent any mitigators you put in place. It is very difficult to do that in an immutable blockchain. And to the extent that you can create infrastructure around KYC that is more cost effective, this is a really good use case, sort of very much upstream in the process. Basically right at the customer acquisition stage. That can be very valuable and eliminate a lot of regulatory burden for carriers. So it is a viable area to explore for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and I just think about, from a claims perspective, there, when you talk about those bad actors, I read a recent stat that our current, the insurance industry today, fraud is, they suffer from $80 billion worth of fraudulent claims. That is a lot. And I think blockchain can help solve for some of that using smart analytics and other methodologies to deal with false claims as you have these bad actors that continue to develop more sophisticated ways to dupe companies. So I think blockchain's innate feature of just capturing the timestamp transactions and having that complete audit trail can hinder some of the bad actors from being able to commit fraud. So I think there's definitely a benefit there when it comes to claims. The other thing I'll talk about for a claims perspective is that our customers today, just like myself and you're competing against insurance companies. Aren't just competing against insurance companies, they're competing against retailers too, who want things at their fingertips. And so from a claims perspective, those usually still take quite a while to process because of all the manual transactions involved. But with blockchain, I think about like travel insurance, how quickly if you buy travel insurance, for instance, and you have a claim through the blockchain, your flight's delayed, this information is gathered, and in a matter of minutes, all of that information is captured, and then a payment is issued to you. So I think there's a way to just get faster and better and to eliminate a lot of these fraudulent claims that we see in the industry today.
Yep. True. I think, yeah. So I think blockchain and claims, that's kind of made for each other. I mean, that's how the industry was looking for, and in a way, I would say the solution is here, and it's just a matter of time that how we execute it, right? So my next question to Marlon is, how is blockchain technology used in the insurance industry? We have seen many case studies, many startups have come up, and even in the sectors like parametric, travel, and auto insurance, telematics. There's many ways that we have learned how it can be used. So any views on how exactly this can be demonstrated by the insurance sector? And attached to that is, what are the important factors that an insurer must be wary of in building a blockchain capability?
Right now, where I think you're going to see it again is around parametric insurance. I almost think of it like an Excel spreadsheet where you have an if-then statement. If
Right.
this happens, then you get paid X.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we'll see more of that. That's the
Yeah.
simplest, I think, concept
So
out there today.
it's kind of a trigger-based, conditioned.
Right. Yes, that's where I think we'll see it in the near future. But I think there's still some impediments. There's like David mentioned, dirty data. I always say that data is like oil. Unless refined, it has no value. Many insurers still are dealing with multiple legacy systems where their data, they can't even get access to extract their data. So there is some technological complexity. And I also think there's some uncertainty when it comes to legal regulations. So, as David mentioned, it's no secret that the insurance industry is among the most regulated industries, I believe. And I think there's still, especially when it comes to smart contracts, they're still largely unregulated. So, how this is going to affect regulators as well as making smart contracts and the use of them in a legally sound way is still unclear.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe if I could add some use cases that come to mind when I think of it, parametric insurance obviously being a good one. I would put that one in the bucket of brand new insurance products that doesn't have any of these legacy issues. I think, again, if you're looking to launch an insurance company today with no constraints around legacy systems, technology, or data, you absolutely need to be thinking about blockchain technologies and how that can be integrated across the value chain. But if I pivot a little bit towards the legacy carriers out there, which still make up a tremendous market share, 99+% of the market. When you look at the legacy carriers that all have these constraints and issues, I think they have to be reasonable and practical around where they're going to implement this technology and not look to necessarily reinvent their entire value chain end to end, but look to replace pieces of it in a componentized way to ultimately get to efficiencies where there's value. Blockchain technologies have been proven outside of insurance in a lot of supply chain applications, manufacturing, consumer products and retail applications. And so it's not that difficult to see, extensions of those use cases that are clearly value add and that are clearly high ROI, extensions of that into the insurance ecosystem. So say, for example, we talked about KYC a little bit, but I could even talk about how people or how carriers manage their vendors on the claim side, especially if they're dealing with third-party auto body shops or third-party car rental agencies. And is there any availability or benefit there to actually moving a lot of the data captured in the servicing of claims, not necessarily in the dollar amounts that end up recorded in the administration systems of the carriers, but the actual metadata that exists in the provisioning of that claim or in the servicing of that claim? Is there opportunities to implement blockchain technologies into that piece to, again, either monitor fraud or other bad actor activities, or potentially trigger contract payouts on a more intelligent basis? And so all of those types of use cases within insurance would be quite similar or parallel to some of the supply chain and other distribution focused applications of blockchain that we see in the other industries. And so don't look to necessarily reinvent everything if you're a legacy carrier. I think look for similarities between aspects of your business model to existing successful blockchain implementations in other industries, and try to draw parallels or extensions from those that might be more valuable.
I think that's a fantastic, advice for the listeners, that, look for similarities. I mean, that's how you can also, not just innovate, but take care of your cost part, which is an important factor towards your profitability, right?
Well, and certainly really impactful in a day like today. So if I use this and just kind of pontificate a little bit on an example here, physical damage carriers, so insurance companies in the property and casualty space that insure property damage, are facing tremendous inflationary pressures today. They know that claims are predictable with some degree of certainty. If you have a large enough portfolio and you have enough data and it's high quality, you have credible estimates of how much in claims you're going to spend in various different forms of accidents. You might not know which policyholder is going to be impacted per se, but on average you're going to need certain amounts of car parts of different types of vehicles, various intermediate or raw construction materials. There's a lot of different input factors into that. To date, I say the insurance industry has not gotten into the inventory game of prepaying for car parts and prepaying for construction materials. That has not happened. But I think it's largely not happened because there's a lot of risk in getting into that supply chain kind of business. That's not the insurance business. But if you think about, if that were enabled through a blockchain, could that build enough trust into that portion of the value chain that prepaying and purchasing materials in advance now becomes economically viable, or at least from a risk perspective doesn't have as much downside? So there's areas like that where you could see clear supply chain applications used in the context of an insurance value chain that maybe enables insurance carriers to cut costs and mitigate risks of inflation in different ways. And so thinking outside the box of the traditional value chain and looking to maybe replace some links in that chain with something a little bit different and a little bit more innovative. Yeah, true.
Well, I think the future is going to be interesting. It's just a matter of time that how the industry executes, because insurance as a whole is kind of functions in a very traditional manner, and it's kind of risk averse in the way they operate, right? So we just see how blockchain as a technology gets executed across the value chain for the sector. Well, thank you, David and Marlon, for the fantastic discussion, and thank you for sharing your thoughts today. A true delight to have you both as our guest.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure.
Likewise, thank you.
And lastly, to wrap this up, thank you for listening, and see you at our next episode. Take care and stay safe. Goodbye for now.